All right. Welcome back to the Art of Game Mastery. I'm John. This is Jat. Today we're going to be talking about classes, some of our favorite classes, what we like about them, what we don't like about them. Interesting enough, we ended up picking a each picked two classes, and they were kind of similar to each other, so it provides some opportunities for comparison there. Um,
We're definitely going to go over the similarities between our two picks.
yes, very much.
We both
Uh,
picked them without really telling each other last week about what we were going to do. And, we didn't pick the same classes, at least.
So before we get into the classes themselves, though, I do need to apologize. Last week we had our inaugural stream, and I accidentally forgot to hit the record button. So unfortunately, while we did get the stream going, it was not saved to Twitch, nor did we get a copy locally to do any editing to upload to YouTube. So going forward, we'll make sure that that is not the case, and I hit the record button every time. So yeah, with that, kick it off. Jack, you
We
want to
had
start with Druid, right?
we're gonna kick it off with Druid. Um, Definitely my favorite class to go over. Um, Druid thematically in all of the tabletops is my favorite, which is why I would have chosen it even if Pathfinder's version sucked. But thankfully they had a lot to pull from, and I think that this Pathfinder version of Druid is, I want to say, my second favorite.
What's
I
your first
still think
favorite?
I like 3.5 version of Druid because everything was there and it was kind of just up to you to build it. But Pathfinder 2, instead of having all of those options available to you at the very beginning, you got to pick one and kind of go with it. So I feel it's less flexible, but having options and being able to pick how you're going to build your character is like what Pathfinder is kind of all about. So fits with the theme.
Cool.
For having an animal companion, I think that's everyone's favorite thing, and I'm sure you'll see John's also one of his favorite ideas. I think everybody wants to have an animal companion. We all want to have a pet, and having your pet have its own stat block, being able to pick from a huge array of companions, and the list of companions is very large. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger with Pathfinder. That one is probably my favorite. Not all druids are created equal. Not all druids get a companion. So they're broken up between different druidic orders. You got animal, leaf, storm, and wild. Uh, Obviously, my favorite type of druid is going to be that animal companion one. You get that really cool heal animal focus. You can choose leaf, and I'm really glad that they included this in there. I feel like having a plant familiar is kind of something that was missing from some of the other druid classes.
Yeah,
I
I
don't really
mean,
think that was done before.
I do like. I mean, the animal companions in general in Pathfinder 2 are very well thought out. I feel like I love how well they grow with your character, but also how you can also like evolve them to different ways. Like you can get you get the mature animal companion. Everyone gets that, but then past that, you can kind of focus more on nimbleness or savagery and kind of fine tune your companion to help complement your own character however you see fit. I thought that was a really cool way of doing things. And also like that you
Absolutely.
don't need to do that. If you I mean it's perfectly viable to have a base level animal companion at level 20 because it's still going to grow with your character and still going to be feasible at the end game, I feel like.
That is something that Pathfinder 2e got right.
Yes.
In 3.5, I was constantly homebrewing rules to kind of balance out the creatures that you had because they were very limited. You end up having a zoo of animals, so that way you weren't kind of upset when one of them died. Um, and instead, all they needed to do was come up with this Pathfinder method of your creature grows steadily with you. It kind of changes exactly how that dynamic is. But I'll stop raving on the animal. There's Storm, which some people like to forget. It's real easy to forget. Druids are full spellcasters. They are literally the jack of all trades. In every tabletop, they always get full casting, more than a bard. They're not any less of a caster than a cleric or a wizard or a sorcerer. And the storm uh, order is not something to look away from. There's Tempest Surge. It's quite a focus spell. Then of course everyone's other favorite is going to be that wild. Wild shape is kind of like what makes a druid. I think you're either going to fall into one or two categories, animal or wild. I would really like to see some more leaf and storm druids, but I don't ever see them in my games. Have you seen them in your games?
No, not really. In fact, I don't see too many. I mean, I don't see too many druids in general in my games. I feel like druid is kind of a underrated class. I feel like a lot of people kind of shy away from them in favor of other spellcasters. Um, so it's unfortunate, and I'd like to see more, but we'll see how that goes in the future.
Right, they're kind of all around support. They're not really a master in any one field,
Mm-hmm.
and so I feel like Druid is like one of the most safest classes to choose if you're in that session zero with a group and you don't know. Traditionally, a friend of yours always plays a tank, and you hear them like say in chat like they're thinking of playing a healer, and with the group composition still hasn't settled down yet. You look at the Druid, you can choose any role. Druid can do everything, and the Druid can do everything well. They can heal just as fine as any other caster. Their ability to tank is, well, it's not nearly as bad as some of the other classes. I mean, you're looking at a full 8 HP. They get shield block, which clerics out of the back don't even get. Clerics, you have to choose a specific cloister.
Yeah, I mean we talked about this a little before the stream, but shield block is shields in general. Shield wielding druids in general are something you don't see very often. I think in tabletop RPGs at all, really. And I mean, when you do see someone play a druid, they typically lean heavily into that spellcaster staff wielding kind of thing. And I think that's a missed opportunity that players often, don't get to
I
take
don't want to tell you
advantage
how to
of.
play your class, but if you're not shield blocking, you're wrong.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but it's
Notice
definitely a
that
handy utility that a lot of people don't take advantage of.
right. I mean, if you're a druid and you're using a bow, I get you. But if you're not using a bow and you're playing it smart and you've got that javelin so that you can be in melee range, not suffer any penalties, still throw at 30 feet, and that freehand, you can use that for shield block. It's right there.
I mean, you could have a shield block, or I mean, a shield and a staff as well, right? You don't necessarily need to wield a staff two-handed, I don't believe. And Jack, your video is going crazy right now.
Oh no.
Your internet might be dropping out, but yeah, I think there's definitely opportunities for shields for druids, and we'll see. Hopefully, we see more of those in the future as people start to realize it. I think Pathfinder 2e is a little unique in that it better focuses on that than other current tabletop RPG systems. So hopefully, as Pathfinder 2e becomes more and more popular, we'll see more and more other systems take advantage of those traits as well.
Druids, because they're a caster, if you're with a stingy GM who's not tossing out a whole lot of magic items, you can totally make up for that. The druid has some feats that allow their weapons to kind of grow with them. That verdant seed is a great feat to choose if you feel like the other players are getting magic items and you're not, or if you're playing in a very difficult setting. Always something to look at. Not to mention, your spells are going to be growing with you. So the druid is really kind of low maintenance in that regard. Not nearly as like low maintenance as a monk. They like first lane, don't need any magic items. A druid can benefit from them, but they don't need them to shine. And I feel like some classes really are constantly looking for that magic item to kind of complement their builds.
I think that's a common trait shared among spellcasters. I think spellcasters in general are less reliant on magic items, whereas martial classes are a bit more because they're using weapons more frequently.
And since a druid can be up in the melee, they don't necessarily need that.
Yeah. I
Kind of
mean, they
helps them with
also, I mean, even when it comes to armor, druids have some spells and whatnot to kind of bolster their own defenses without, you know, armor items, so to speak. So that helps them as well there.
So yeah, I think that covers. So personally, why I like playing a druid, I like having the option to kind of fit every niche needed in a group. Um, that is like me personally, and I often play druids. I played a druid in one of your games.
Yep.
I got to test out the having a pet dinosaur, which
Didn't last
just
very long.
just the
Poor
metaphor
Chompy.
alone is, oh, Chompy. Yeah, I had to replace Chompy with Chewy.
Yeah.
Chompy did not make it after that. It was like third encounter. It was a rough encounter.
Hey, we're still figuring out the I think it was our first Pathfinder game actually.
That was your first.
Yes.
Uh,
So I was still figuring out the the encounter build. So sorry about that. Sorry, Chompy. Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace, Chompy. I think we had like a broken shield and some heavily injured people, but that was an amazing fight though, because getting those nat 20s and knocking that spider boss into the abyss, that was.
I believe it
But
was.
by Druid, hang back, provide that necessary flanking bonus that I think the Compass Nasus, I don't remember what it's called in Pathfinder. It's the little tiny raptor thing. Do you remember what that creature is called?
I don't. It's a weird name, and I never remember what it is. It's actually, I think it's actually a historically correct dinosaur name, but I can never remember it. It's something weird. Yeah, I know what you're saying. The little mini raptor guy.
Right, but I was providing flanking. I think I was providing flanking to like between the melee fighters, because a creature could just move in and out of combat. In addition to providing heals at a distance, so I really felt like I was optimizing my play. For those of you who are power gamers, that feeling of kind of controlling the battlefield, it's something that's easily achievable while playing a druid. You don't necessarily have to be a wizard or a sorcerer.
Yeah, I'd actually argue full control of the battlefield is probably easier as a druid than a sorcerer or a wizard. I feel like even a wizard or a sorcerer does have some shortcomings in terms of support and things they can do at the same time. Whereas druid, like you said, it can kind of provide support with this animal companion while also either casting spells to augment damage or to help heal or add more support, and they can kind of do that stuff concurrently, which is really nice. Especially since the command an animal action basically is one action, so it gives you something to do with that third action when you're casting a 2-action activity spell.
Absolutely. The my action economy was constantly cast a spell or move, maybe a reposition that lasts, because most of the spells are 2 actions. That last action was like, I spent, as a caster, when you're in a group, you usually spend your skill points towards that nature, religion, arcana, or occult, so that way you can provide the party with coverage in that spell, different spell schools. And so it doesn't really leave a whole lot of room for intimidation or
right.
performance, making a distraction. But
I find that oftentimes wizards and sorcerers and spellcasters in general that don't have things like animal companions like struggle to figure out what to do at the third action every turn. I mean, sometimes you can get away with like an intimidate or a demoralize or a I mean, if you're up close and personal, maybe a feint or something. But it's really dependent on your skill set, and also it's very situationally dependent. Like you won't be able to do that necessarily every turn. So I find that having an animal companion or something like that, maybe even a familiar, is something very useful to a spellcaster in order to, capitalize on that third action you get every turn that don't necessarily know what to use it for.
Absolutely. That familiar is definitely kind of there to aid them. And then if you have an animal companion, it's like familiar 2.0.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked a bit about Druid. Kind of following that up, one of the
What
classes I
class did you
picked,
choose?
at least conceptually, is Ranger. Um, Ranger I find is an interesting class. I think that as a concept, it's an amazing class because it's super flexible in that uh, you could do a ranged ranger with focus on bow. You could also do a melee ranger that focuses on melee. Um, but or you could do a hybrid ranger that you kind of excels in both areas. You also get your option as an animal companion there, and I think it's unfortunate in Pathfinder 2e. I feel like as after having played Ranger quite a bit, and I really do enjoy it, but I feel like unless your campaign has either, or I guess, and or a specific type of enemy that is prominently focused, or a specific type of terrain that is very common, then you're almost always better off as a fighter. And if you want that animal companion, taking the Beastmaster archetype, because mechanically, rangers and fighters are very similar, except for those, um, you know, enemy focused or terrain focused feats you get as a ranger, which you could arguably take a second archetype to kind of grab some of those as well if you really wanted to.
Can you grab Hunt Prey if you were choosing fighter?
No, Hunt Prey is a feature of Ranger. So unfortunately, that specific one would be off the table. But there are like other feats that Ranger gets that are tailored towards favored enemies or favored terrain and whatnot. That if you wanted to, you could take some kind of multi-class or archetype to facilitate those. But I'd also argue that the campaigns, other than maybe Undead, the campaigns that focus on a single type of enemy or a single type of terrain are somewhat rare. So I'd say 9 times out of 10, you're probably better off taking a fighter Beastmaster combo than going straight Ranger. Let me know in the chat if you guys feel differently and why, but I don't see any reason why you wouldn't choose that to be. I mean, if you were going for efficiency, I guess if you're going for straight flavor, sure, but if you're not at that point, there's nothing really stopping you from flavoring your fighter slash beastmaster as a ranger, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I tend to see most rangers take range attacks. Um, I mean in our campaign I play a strength based ranger. I think Dex is actually one of his dump stats, which is funny. And I love that. I love playing that. With the animal companion you get, especially the one I upgraded to nimble animal companion with the Beastmaster archetype and heal animal focus spell. It's like it's so fun to just give yourself and your allies flanking, and then you can also take advantage of using your animal companion and yourself as to provide actions for like demoralize and faint and trip and whatnot. So it's a really fun
Your
support
animal
slash DPS
companion
class.
when you said you took Nimble for your animal companion, did that unlock their extra ability that they get?
Yes, so you get their extra ability at when you either take Nimble or Savage, which is I guess the second evolution of animal companions.
That's at
Um,
what, level 6?
it depends. I think. Let's see. Let me pull up the Ranger class here,
I
but
feel like, well,
I believe that you get it a little different whether you take it through Beastmaster or the Ranger
that was kind of the
class
tipping
feat.
point for me with the Ranger, because I felt like the Ranger was a bit underperforming in combat, but I mean that's to be expected because I'm comparing it to a fighter, obviously.
Well, at the beginning, we also made the mistake of not realizing the animal companion scaled with every level. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that caused Fang to be a bit weaker in combat as we leveled up. But once we realized that, I think he really becomes quite a force to be reckoned with.
No,
Um,
we had a Druid too that had a bird for attacking, and I feel like
yeah,
once we got to level 2, that should have happened immediately, but we didn't. The rules as written are difficult to decipher. Gotta love
Incredible
fight
Animal
mode.
Companion is level 10 for Ranger. And I think it's actually level. I think it's actually earlier. His Beastmaster archetype. I'd have to pull that up, but I'm pretty sure because I have it on uh, Gunner, and he's not level 10 yet, so I'm pretty certain Beastmaster gets like level 9 or 8 or something. But at any rate, I think that when you play a ranger, you have a lot more opportunities in Pathfinder than you do in systems like 5e to really add to that support in addition to just dishing out damage. In 5e, the ranger is kind of a laughing stock because all of its stuff is built around exploration activities, whereas most 5e campaigns don't feature those very prominently. So outside of those exploration activities, they don't really get much. And in Pathfinder, I feel like you do have a lot of that exploration activity stuff if your campaign, focuses on that stuff. But you also have a lot more you can do out of that. You have a lot of fighter-ish abilities like twin takedown, and you have the flurry. What is the flurry hunter's edge that really favors that melee, or you have the I forget what it's called, but the archery focused one or the range focused one that gives you some boons there. So there's a lot of really cool stuff Ranger can do in 2e outside of just exploration stuff, um, which is really cool.
So right, with mature at level 4, and then nimble or savage at level 8.
Is that for the Beastmaster? Is that for the class?
I That's just the ruling for the animals. So I think that is either or. So remember, the animals also grow with Druid animal companion.
Right,
It's
right. I'm
the
looking at
same.
Ranger's feats right now, though, and it says level 10 is when you get the incredible animal companion for the Nimble Savage, unless I'm missing something. But
Oh,
eight,
I'm
eight,
looking at
eight is what.
Beastmasters.
Eight is
Beastmasters
what.
is level 8. Okay.
Anyway, we're probably
Yeah,
just missing
Beastmaster
something
would get it.
here. But at level 8's when Gunner got it, so that makes sense. Um, see.
Sounds about right.
I do think if you do have a ranger in your campaign, it's probably, and you're a GM, you're probably, I don't say obligated, but you should feel you should add more kinds of exploration activities to your campaign to really give that ranger something to specialize in, even if they're not an exploration focused ranger. Letting them take advantage of some of their survival uh, skill that they'll undoubtedly be highly trained in, whether that's like foraging or hunting or fishing for food or tracking prey. Like with the hunt prey feature, one of the cool things it gets is it lets you hunt your prey more easily and more efficiently. So I think that giving rangers
Actually,
opportunities
hunt
to
for
do
prey.
that, and what was that?
It said you're using hunt prey to actually hunt for prey.
Yes, exactly. So I think
The foraging
giving your
part.
ranger opportunities to do that would maybe make them feel a bit more at home there, and not just a fighter with an animal companion. Um, let's see what else. Another cool thing that rangers, since they are usually trained in survival, they will likely be able to use the subsist action to, um, you know, live in the lands instead of paying for an inn or whatnot if they're in an area that would facilitate that.
Yeah,
So I think that allowing that is something you could do as a GM to really help rangers out. And you could actually add some stuff on top
Rangers
of
should
that.
never
Like,
really be paying a bill at the inn.
what was
They
that?
shouldn't. The Rangers shouldn't be like paying a bill at the inn. They shouldn't be like stocking up on
Right.
rations.
They could do all this stuff in their downtime pretty easily with just their own skills. And I think that, you could add a bit to that. It's rather than just playing it out and be like, oh yeah, you camp outside for the night. Maybe, you come across, as you're looking for a place to rest, you come across some weird treasure, or you come across a savage enemy that is kind of trying to stake its claim in that territory, and you have to deal with it in order to make your own claim there. So there's things you could do there to kind of spice up that situation in terms of role play and even mechanics and whatnot. The core rule book doesn't provide any specific guidance there, but I think that as a GM you can kind of come up with something to make that a bit more flavorful. Um, so yeah, that's my shtick on Ranger. I think conceptually, it's an awesome idea. Um, I'm not sure they've really nailed it in Pathfinder 2e, though it's definitely better than other systems that I've played. I'd say, but
Better than fifth edition.
yeah, definitely better in fifth edition. But I'd even argue better than like Pathfinder 1e. Maybe I'd say they've made some improvements there. But either way, I mean, most time, 9 times out of 10, you'll be better off as a fighter Beastmaster if you even want that Beastmaster perks at all. So.
That's a really good idea. Can you imagine? So you're out there in the woods, foraging, and then you come across another ranger who's like this. Alos had this in the chat.
Oh,
so you're out there and you meet another ranger, and they're like, "Hey, you're roughing it."
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, oftentimes encounters are monstrous in nature, especially when you're out in the wild, or they're bandits or something that's just 100% out to get you. But there's no reason an encounter can't be like you come across the trading caravan or you come across another ranger, like Ayla said. That adds some role play opportunities for encounters, and maybe those do devolve into combat, depending on how that role play plays out. But there's
really
all kinds of cool things you can do.
Out, like what the major imports exports are for like the city.
Mm-hmm.
So like if it's near a river, it might help you kind of you as the GM to role play and help flesh out at the same time. I do this a lot with improv, so that I can be like, there's a river that goes through here, and what's beyond that river. And so like the group sometimes wants to know what's around the immediate vicinity of either this town that they've been in or this town that they just reached. And if you're as a ranger out there roughing it in the sticks, and you meet another ranger, and you can start trading stories.
Yeah.
The players at the table aren't going to just be sitting on their phones and ignoring the conversation because there could be some, the juicy info, lay of the land. You could, weave into the story.
Totally, and you never know. Maybe those NPCs that they come up could play a future role in the story, and they can hark back and be like, "Oh, I remember that guy, or I remember that woman." Like, I never thought we'd see them again.
If you find some tracks of the next monster that you're going to put in the group's path as a GM, so you can lay down some foreshadowing. I did that to you with Gunnar when you guys encountered some previous lizard folk and cat folk fighting.
Yep.
I remember if you guys remember that.
Yeah, I mean, I Rangers, I don't often see them played as like a scout role or a an information gathering role, but I feel like they're very well suited for that task, and I feel like it's something useful to everyone that Rangers could be doing, especially if you don't have a rogue in the party or something.
Or a competent rogue.
Yeah, or a competent rogue, or even maybe you have a rogue, but they don't specialize in that particular craft. Maybe they're a different kind of rogue.
All kinds of rogues. We'll cover that eventually, I'm sure.
So yeah, I think we've touched on Ranger quite a bit. I think the next class you wanted to cover was Investigator. Speaking of roguish individuals,
they are
Sherlock Holmes over here.
They are rather roguish, but they are. I almost want to say they're the lawful side of rogue. Not that there's any alignment restrictions in Pathfinder 2 like there was in 3.5, but there is a ton of similarities between the Investigator and the Rogue. It's actually quite uncanny, and we're going to go a little further into that. To briefly explain, you've already said kind of like a Sherlock Holmes. If you want to play the Hardy Boys, your D campaign, Investigator is perfect. I like to kind of think of them as the Van Helsing of the party. If you're familiar with Mary Shelley, kind of like being the know-it-all, and not in an obtuse way, but just like being well prepared, knowing what the enemy is, seeing the signs, being able to identify. And this example would be like, is it a vampire? Investigator is perfect for solving problems for combat encounters, social encounters. They're even pretty useful while exploring. And then, of course, they've got a lot of options for downtime. They are my favorite for a few reasons. One is they are very team focused. The Investigator, I really don't feel like they take limelight away from the party. They don't need to go off skulking into the dark. Instead, an Investigator is kind of using everybody in their circle as like framework. When they're fighting in combat, they're giving bonuses to their allies and not just flanking. But yeah, even so, they still get basically sneak attack. Yeah, that I just said it just like that.
Yeah.
Strategic strike is sneak attack.
Yeah. Almost verbatim.
There's no way around the level increase. You get 1d6 at starting level, and it goes to 2 for 5th, 3 for 9th, 4 for 13th, 5 for 17th level, and it's precision damage. And all you gotta do is devise a stratagem. And stratagem is very similar to the way a rogue stealths and comes up with a way to distract, make the enemy flat-footed. A stratagem is very similar. And I kind of like the
It's probably
flavor.
a bit more flexible than rogue stealth in a lot of situations, honestly.
Right, because you feel like with a lot of rogues, you feel like I've been spotted, time to go hide. An Investigator doesn't need to do that.
Yeah.
Same HP as a rogue. Their key ability is intelligence, which is right where it should be. I feel like I've never looked at a class and said that their key ability has not been, 8 points of health with intelligence. And I personally like playing intelligence-based characters. I really do like that starting languages and starting skill modifier. I really wish that there was some more like mid to late game benefits of having a high intelligence. Because like will controls your wisdom controls your will save, and dexterity controls your reflex save. Intelligence really doesn't do anything after first level.
Yeah.
So that's a shame. But this class really takes intelligence and kind of just runs with it. And between their different methodologies, you have so many options to choose from alchemical sciences to pretty much just saying, hey, I wanted to get a free dedication in alchemy. Cool, you can do that. Forensic medicine. I haven't seen anybody use forensic medicine yet, but it would be kind of like playing a healing version of a rogue. So I have yet to see somebody pull that off, and I am really looking forward to someone making a healing rogue.
Yeah, I'd say the one thing that differentiates investigators from rogues significantly is the lack of, well, not lack of, they still get a lot, but comparative lack of skills and skill feats and whatnot that rogue gets that investigator doesn't. But functionally and mechanically and like combat and whatnot, I think investigator very much plays very similar to a rogue.
So I believe they get a skill increase every level, and they get a skill feat every other. That's the same growth as a rogue, correct?
Yes, but I'm double checking. You get a new skill feat every 2 levels, and you get a skill, and rogue gets one every level.
Who gets a skill feat every level?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the rogue is definitely going to be more of a skill monkey, but the investigator makes up for it with.
You also start with much more skills as a rogue than investigator, but yeah.
Yeah. I feel like a thief would deal more damage than any investigator, having that stat with the dexterity, but being able to pump up your intelligence and do extra damage with intelligence.
Yeah.
Provided it's the same type of weapons that a rogue are going to be using. But investigator actually has a slightly bigger weapon pool to choose from.
Yep.
They can use. They're trained in martial weapons. So if you're picking a investigator, you can pick a 2-handed martial weapon, so as long as it has that either finesse or agile trait. So you could be looking at dishing out some much larger damage weapon dice than, say, a rogue, which we limited to something like small rapiers.
Right. And I believe, just double checking this before I say it. No, they also don't get light armor expert until 13 as well. That's an unfortunate bit, but um, I mean, Rogue is the same way. But I don't know. I guess they aren't really intended to be that up close and personal. And what they lack there in armor uh, proficiencies, they can make up with their dexterity and or intelligence. So
That intelligence, bro. So if you want to play like the healer from Naruto, um, you've got that forensic medicine. You can
mhm.
totally be rather stealthy and still dish out, battle medicine. Battle medicine is completely overpowered, but hey. And then of course there's interrogation, which, oh man, I feel sorry for any GM if a player chooses this. Some of these can be a little obnoxious, like the feat that's odd. Um, that thing needs a cooldown because if we have time to go over some of the feats for investigator.
Yeah, we got time. You're talking about the preparation one or whatever it's called.
No, I don't think you and I talked about this ahead of time. They have this ability called That's Odd. You can take it. It's a level 1 feat. So it's basically like whenever you enter a new location, such as a room or a corridor, you immediately notice one thing out of the ordinary. And then, hey GM, your job is is to tell them, yeah, that there's something there or not.
Yeah.
And it's like it can be challenging for a new GM to constantly be like, yes, there's something of noteworthy, or no, there isn't. If you do have a player that has That's Odd feat, then you guys need to have a conversation about how they're going to use that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, an investigator can be a fun class, but before you use it, you should probably talk with the GM and make sure that it's a good fit for that campaign, because it's not gonna be a good fit for every campaign, every party. I mean, like the obvious example is if you're running like a dungeon crawl or like a mega dungeon or something where there's not much role play opportunity. I mean, you could have a little bit of utility there, especially with like things like That's Odd and whatnot. And if your GM's good about adding lore and flavor to the dungeon itself, but by and large, you're going to feel shackled a lot in those kind of campaigns. But if you have a large sandbox campaign, it might make more sense where you're kind of going from town to town and learning new things and meeting new NPCs all the time and whatnot, and solving problems all over the place. I think that
It's almost
investigators are a great
like if
fit.
you don't know what kind of game you're getting into and you choose an investigator, you're basically saying, "Hello, RP. I would like to roleplay."
Yeah. So definitely bring it up, and not every party is always going to be okay with having an investigator in their ranks as well. So you just in general, it's a good class to talk to the party and the GM with before you set on it. Don't just like show up to the table with a I'm playing investigator, like my name's blah blah blah, and this is where he's from and whatnot. You know, so
I mean, you've got some serious roleplay cojones if you do.
yeah,
You're literally telling the group, "Hey, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna have some fun with this." Because if you've watched any of the recent like Sherlock Holmes movies, which are all of them between the David Cumberbatch and the Robert Downey Jr. ones, they're all amazing, and they kind of like I feel like Paizo sat down and watched all those different episodes, grabbed all of the different ideas, and they were like, "Think tank, let's make these into feats," because that's literally what happened in my opinion. And so if you want to be that kind of person in have we seen any examples of this in a fantasy setting other than like well, the setting that I listed, Van Helsing? Trying to think of a example of like what this would be like.
um, I can't think of any off the top of my head any characters that are like this sort of archetype, like that's their focus. There's definitely been inquisitive kinds of scenes in various fantasy settings, but I don't can't think of any characters who like that's their archetype is the Inquisitor or the investigator or whatever you want to call it. But I'm sure they're
Mm.
out there. I mean, I'm no by no means a dictionary of fantasy stories.
But
So
the The one feat that I did want to cover was the I don't feel like preparing for the campaign feat, which is
Predictive
I had it.
purchase.
Yes,
I hate
that
this
is.
feat with a passion. I think it is like I would go so far probably just to outlaw it in my games completely. It is such a bullshit. Sorry to cuss, but a bullshit feat in my opinion. It is lazy. It is game. It's breaking the fourth wall is what it is, and I don't know. I think it's completely absurd.
I love it as a player. I hate it as a GM. Every time one of my player uses this thing, I go, oh god. I'm like, hey, I finally created a something that can challenge the party, and then the investigator was like, actually, while I was in town, I purchased a remove curse scroll. I'm
Yeah.
like,
And then you have
really?
the evolution of it, which is implausible purchase, which just takes it even further and just makes it even more bullshit. And then Mastermind Rogue gets a I forget the name of the feat, but they get a feat that very much how should I say
It's very similar.
yeah
It's not the same.
similar and it complements it very well. It's just absurd in my opinion.
Yeah, if you're playing in a party where you have an investigator and a rogue with both of these on, like those two could perpetually just
Yeah.
they could really mess with your campaign, which is great. I know some players feel really rewarded when they do that. Um, if a player ever messes up my campaign or throws it off the rails, I want to let them know just how let them really let them feel great about it. Let them reel in the moment. You've thwarted me. I've been thwarted. I think as far as the acting goes, like some people can get really upset or hurt about that. If you're GMing and a player throws your game off the rails by using their class feature,
I'm
then
not so concerned
you're
about
winning.
throwing the game off the rails. I don't think that's much of a concern for me. I think it's more that it just totally a power gamer move, right? Like it's totally a power gamer feat. It's saying that I want to be the spotlight in this situation. I want to make sure I have what I need in any situation I can think of. Like I don't know. To me, it just doesn't sit right as a player or a GM. It just feels very meta-y.
I haven't seen it used so that it only benefits the player though.
No, I don't think it. I don't think there's
It's always been more of a team thing. Like
right, but
the
I still don't feel like it's
to claiming gear for the whole team kind of thing.
yeah. Still, I think that it's very metagamey, and I think that it doesn't make sense in the context of your world. So or in a world, um, so I don't know. To me, it's just a shitty feat. Um, it could be fun. I get it, but I don't know. It feels I dislike it personally, and I know I'm not alone in that opinion.
It's okay. I feel like the different minds of
Yep,
GMs.
yep,
This is why we come together, and this is why you
yep,
and I chat this out because people are going to feel very differently about this. And I would really like to hear other GMs how you guys feel about this feat. Has someone used it in your campaign? Has it derailed the campaign? I mean, in a good way, in a bad way. I want to hear about that. If anybody has any examples, I would love to read those also. So if you want to hear them read out,
for sure.
I think we've beaten Investigator to death. Maybe some more cloaks and daggers. What do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah. So following up the investigator, we had the rogue, which is my all-time favorite class in any fantasy RPG, whether it be a tabletop RPG, a video game RPG, whatever. I even love them in like novels. I think that rogue characters in novels make for excellent storytelling. Um,
I
however,
have to.
I'm no fool, and I know that especially in the context of tabletop RPGs, and especially in the context of new players, you typically get people who have this how should I say pre-existing notions of what a rogue does and doesn't do, and they tend to devolve into the memed, chaotic, stupid rogue that really just causes annoyance for everyone in the party except themselves, including the game master. So I think
You
that
can totally take that guy and say that rogue.
yeah. So I mean, I definitely see why some GMs dislike rogues. I don't think it's necessarily the fault of the class. I think that players need to be more aware of what they're getting into, and and part of it I think is a problem of MMORPGs, and a lot of, especially as new players come into the tabletop community, most of them have played games before, and those pre-existing notions of what a rogue does are embedded in them from things like MMORPGs. So they come into D&D, thinking, "Oh, I need to steal everything I see, and I need to kill everything I see because I'm evil and blah blah blah." And I think that it just they don't realize that they're no longer playing just themselves, and their actions have consequences that a game, like a video game, cannot necessarily account for. And those consequences are going to affect more than just them, and everyone else in their party are also going to succumb to those consequences as well. And I think that educating newer players on rogues, and I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, if you're a new player, sorry, you can't play a rogue, just until they get their feet wet and really get a feel for how the game works itself. I think it's a very reasonable stance to take. But rogues themselves, they're probably one of, if not the most flexible class in the game. Way back in like 1E and 2E and AD&D and all that stuff, back when thieves, actually, they were not originally just rogues. They were just, the thief was the class that was created. When they were eventually released, they were not particularly good at combat and whatnot, but they were the skillmonger. Like their job was to, like, back then, you leveled up by getting gold. You leveled up by looting, right? You didn't level up by killing stuff. So having a thief in your party to get more loot and more gold to make you get levels faster. So while they weren't necessarily the best in terms of combat, they served their purpose in that way. And then they eventually, became more of a skillmonger, to kind of be like a jack of all trades, master of none kind of deal. And I think in later editions, as rogues became more and more combat focused, or not focused, but combat efficient, they kind of kept that baggage from previous systems. Whereas, oh yeah, these guys can excel in damage dealing in combat or whatnot, but they can also do basically everything else as well to some degree. So you end up with, like, in 5e and Pathfinder 2e, where you have these rogues who are not shabby in dealing damage and whatnot, but also they can kind of do everything else. Like in Pathfinder 2e, as playing a rogue, it's sometimes really hard to come up with a skill feat to pick every level that fits the vision you have for your character. That's 19 skill feats, or I think 20 if you count the first level one. But it's not easy to come up with one of those for every level, especially depending on how you put various upgrades into your skills. You might not be able to get the ones you want when you want them and whatnot if you don't plan ahead very well.
For a new player to not play a rogue, yeah, I can see that. There's a lot of impulsiveness that happens with rogues. The want to steal everything is kind of a instant gratification feeling. And RPGs, especially like JRPGs and MMOs, they give you that feeling of, I searched the chest and I found something, nothing in it. You're playing D&D, and that chest that you're searching is somebody's. Obviously, we're talking about an intellectual property here, but you're in somebody else's world, and you just go up and you start looking for things in chests. There's no consequence in an MMO, or unless you're playing like Elder Scrolls, where there's actual.
But even then, you pay some gold and you're on your way, kind of deal.
It doesn't really affect like your reputation or your standing, and I feel like
or any of your party members.
Party members. If you steal from your party members, stop playing.
Yeah.
You're going to get, your character in game is going to get murdered, and your character, you as a person at a game, might not find the location of where the next group session is.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you're not stealing from your party members, stealing from someone in a tabletop RPG, usually in a well thought out game, has consequences in the world. That those consequences, even if they go to jail, it's not just going to be you that goes to jail, right? Or it's not going to be you that gets attacked by the owner of that chest or whatever. It's going to be the party, and maybe they just wipe their hands and be like, I don't know that guy, I don't know that person, get away from me.
I could see that happening.
Yeah, but in the
You guys
end,
wanna
even if that does
have
happen,
a
it's
group
still going to
of
result in a combat between you
friends.
and that NPC that the other people are just going to be sitting there twiddling their thumbs for. You got to remember this is a social construct of a game, right? And in a video game, even a multiplayer one, you still have a degree of solo to it. Whereas this is very much an all or nothing kind of game, and don't I don't think new players always grasp that immediately. So, but
Right, that should be something. If a new player is playing a rogue, you as a GM should be sitting down and explaining. Theft should be kind of you should kind of gain the approval of all your party members before you go on thieving, or at least the majority. Like, hey guys, if I steal this and the town guard comes after me after I steal this, you guys gonna assist me? And the group can kind of enforce this and be like, is this something worth stealing? You know, there's so many things in games that are worth stealing. The king has a relic, and you want to steal it from the castle. That's a quest for the whole party to
yeah,
to go
just
on.
make sure they're on
The
board with it
king
first.
has
I mean,
a few gold pieces in his dresser. I'm sorry, but that's not an epic quest.
even a
The whole party
professional thief
is
isn't going to go out of their way and risk everything to steal just everything they come across, right? They have
a
they
professional
have
thief is not
specific
gonna do
heists
that.
in mind that they have determined that the risk is worth the reward to them. And if there's others involved, they've made sure that everyone involved is on the same page in doing so. Like it's not, I don't know, it's not. It's the same thing with assassins and killing people, right? Like even a purely evil assassin isn't just going to go around murdering everyone. Like that'd be stupid. Like that would just get all the guards' attention on you, and you're one person. You're not going to be able to, just take out everyone forever, kind of deal. Like an evil assassin or a good assassin, whichever you want to play, isn't going to just go around murdering everyone. They're going to pick their targets wisely. They're going to prepare for the assassination. They're going to request the aid of other individuals who could help with either escape or the act itself. And they're going to make sure everyone who's helping is on the same page and okay with the risks as well. Like these are professionals. They're not just people running around like chickens with their head cuts off, right? So I don't know. I think that video games have kind of done the tabletop RPG community a disservice in that regard.
So mechanically, for Pathfinder, what is other than we've covered all the thematical elements? What
Right.
about Pathfinder 2.0 does the rogue really? What itch does it scratch for you? What mechanically about it is what makes it your favorite?
I love that. I feel like the different subclasses of rogue that they have are just brilliant. You have the ruffian rogue, which is arguably strength based, which is just hilarious. Like never in a tabletop RPG have I encountered where that kind of rogue is built directly into the rules. It's genius. Like
Oh, I think fifth edition had a brute for rogues, didn't they?
did they? I don't. Maybe later in the game after I mostly stopped playing it. That's a possibility. I don't recall it though. Let us know in the comments if I'm
I think
if
it
I'm
was
wrong
strength
here.
based, but
But
it was very much of like a bruiser mentality.
that's
I'll
very
have to look it up.
possible.
We'll have to look it up later. Sorry.
Yeah, no
Go,
worries.
keep
But yeah, I think that, so generally speaking, I'm not very fond of the idea of subclasses in Pathfinder 2e. I feel like they don't serve much mechanical purpose. I feel like if you want to go down that road, you just pick the feats that target that road. I don't see why you need subclasses to tailor them. But for rogues, I think that they did such a good job of diversifying the subclasses between, in the core rulebook, you have what, the ruffian, the thief, and um, the not the smuggler. What's it called? The
Arcane
scoundrel. And then in the advanced player's guide, you have the mastermind and the, what's the other one? What am I missing?
The Eldritch Trickster.
Yes,
My
Eldritch
favorite.
Trickster. Yes, the Eldritch.
Although I like Arcane Trickster, I'm interested in why they changed it to Eldritch.
I would guess just to differentiate themselves from 5e a bit more. But yeah, I agree. Arcane Trickster definitely rolls off the tongue a bit easier.
I think is the Eldritch Trickster charisma or intelligence based?
Either one, depending on whether you choose sorcerer or wizard as your base. I think that's how it works. I don't quite recall. But the I think there's the diversity of of archetypes you can. I hate overloading that term, but the diversity of archetypes you can play as a character with a rogue is just beyond any other class I can think of. Um,
You were dead on. You get to choose your key ability. I love it.
yeah. Um, so there's a little bit for everyone in a rogue, and you don't have to play a thief. You don't have to play an assassin, right? You could play I think the scoundrel is very much like a smooth talking, like noble. I view it as like a noble rogue, where you're like maybe from nobility and you
Have
kind
you
of
played the
haughty in
thief?
nature. Was
What
that?
what what racket are you playing in my game?
I'm playing the thief in your game, but that's just I chose
The
thief
thief.
purely for mechanics because I'm actually more of an assassin archetype in your game.
Mechanically,
But
the thief
I
is good
focus
against
on up
everyone.
close and personal combat rather than range, so I wanted that +3 to my melee attack, or plus not +3 plus dexterity to my melee attacks.
Yeah,
So
mechanically, the thief is the best for rogue.
for combat, yes. If you're playing a ruffian and you're heavily all in on strength, you can definitely deal a lot of damage as a ruffian as well. Um, but yeah, with your typical dagger wielding or sword wielding rogue, I think that thief is definitely combat wise a wise choice. Um, but other
For
than
my
that,
for my
I
tank
like
rogue,
that. Was that?
for tank rogue, I felt I made the role of a tank for my rogue in another one of my friends' games, and chose thief. No regrets. Being able to
I
double
think as a
strength.
tank, I'd probably choose a ruffian over a thief personally. Um, and I
It
would
depends how you look at a tank. Tank is damage dealing, or is tank being able to tank the damage? And I
well,
found that with uncanny dodge and taking
you
all
don't.
dexterity, my armor class was
Yeah,
like just insane.
sure. You mean nimble dodge, not uncanny dodge?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things you can do there, and I think ruffian has a lot of ways to boost their AC beyond. I mean, rogues in general aren't going to get much armor, so if you're going for tank, you're going to be relying on other kind of things to bolster your AC instead. Um, but yeah, I just think, excuse me, in general, you have a lot of leeway into what you can pick. And even if you pick a subclass, the feats are so diverse for rogue, and that a lot of the feats that do different things. A lot of the feats for rogue aren't tied to a specific subclass. There are some that are, um, but there are a lot that aren't. And even if you pick like a ruffian, there's still a lot of non-ruffian feats that you get for rogue that are going to behoove you, even if they're not directly suited for a ruffian strength-based rogue. Um, so I think that the ability to really pick and choose your character there is quite advanced. Um, Plus, I love the role play opportunities that Rogue presents you. A lot of people choose the edgy Rogue or the emo central that doesn't speak much and whatnot. But I find it much more fun when you play a Rogue that does speak a lot. Perhaps deceptively. Perhaps they speak a lot to not want you to know they're an assassin, or perhaps they speak a lot to, uh, you know, misdirect or misguide your interpretations of what they're going for. I think that people see assassins in a lot of and thieves in a lot of pop culture, and they don't realize that in real life, deception has a lot to do with talking. Like when somebody's speaking, there's going to be deception in their voice a lot of times if they're deceiving you. If they're an assassin, they're not going to always just sneak and stab you from the back, a la Assassin's Creed. They're going to try to get up close to you and make contact with you in a casual manner, and then slip some poison in your drink or something, right? They're gonna fit the bill they need to fit in order to make the job work, and that's not always edgy, sneaky, whatnot. Sometimes it involves playing a character or pretending you're someone you're not. And I think that that's something a lot of people miss in playing rogues.
I certainly miss it. I have yet to have a rogue poison someone's drink.
Hmm. I play a rogue in one of our campaigns, and I definitely play him more as the talkative type. The very, I guess you could say, jaunty rogue. He's very much, what's the word I'm looking for? Rambly in his speech, I guess. So
Mm.
he doesn't really let on his true personality very well. So he kind of plays off as like very lighthearted and nonchalant, I guess. But who
It's
knows?
kind of like Indiana Jones, in my opinion. I feel like that is like the archetypal rogue is a treasure hunter.
Yeah, or a
You
Han
know,
Solo, right? Like a scoundrelly rogue that. But I mean,
Mhm.
not all talkative. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? I want
Well,
to say
yeah, Han Solo
playing.
has a mouth on him.
Yeah, not all like talkative rogues are necessarily scoundrels, right? Like talkative rogues could be thieves, they could be assassins, whatever. It's just the things they're talking about are going to be different. But so yeah, I just feel like rogues are just so versatile in so many ways. Much like your idea of a druid being able to fill a lot of shoes at once, I feel like a rogue can also do that. If you step out of the bounds of what your stereotypical rogue is and start to play to different strengths. As a GM, though, I think that being a rogue, if you have a rogue player, is going to require some thought on your part to really let them shine a little bit. Some rogues are going to be trap finding focused, and as a GM, you're going to want to put traps in your game. And if it's a really, I mean, you're going to want to do that anyway. But if it's a really trap finding focused rogue, maybe you make your trap encounters a bit more complex than your just normal simple traps, or even some of the simpler complex traps in the core rulebook. Maybe the trap itself is an entire encounter that takes it's multiple traps like intertwined into one as a sort of puzzle, so to speak. That your rogue is
Sounds like a
particularly,
gauntlet.
uh, yeah, exactly, like a gauntlet. Um,
Ooh.
there's in exploration activities, you might want to give your chance a rogue to be stealthy outside of combat, so that when an encounter does come up, they have a chance to roll stealth for initiative instead of perception, right? And they have a chance to take their enemies by surprise. Um, since surprise rounds aren't actually a thing in Pathfinder 2e, like rules is written, they kind of rely on the rogue being hidden before combat in order to get those, sneaky attacks
Yeah,
on them.
as a GM, if you're playing a character that can use a different initiative other than perception, as a GM, your discretion, you should be letting the player use that.
I
Like,
mean, if it makes sense, right? Like as a rogue, I should be trying to, as a player, I should be trying to put myself in a position where I am hidden before combat and I can use stealth as a role because it makes sense there, right? Um,
at least for a surprise round.
right. Uh, but sometimes doing that requires a little of assistance from the GM as well. Like, if I'm just strolling around a castle, humpty humpty, then I'm not going to be very sneaky. So I'm not gonna. There's no reason I should be using stealth as a role there. But as a rogue, I shouldn't be doing that, right? I should be trying to be a little discreet with my movements and my foraging and whatnot. But so yeah, do you have anything to add on rogues there? We've gone over an hour a little bit, so I think we should probably be. I mean, we could both talk for days on rogues. We
Covered
both
all
have
the
very
rogue
strong
and we didn't
opinions
even
on this
mention
class.
sneak
So
attack.
what was
Yeah,
that?
you really love the theme of rogue because we went over I think for like half an hour on the rogue. We didn't even cover like
Yeah.
the mechanics of
So
rogue.
yeah, when I was picking my favorite classes, I was very much thinking theme more than anything. I mean, has so many different paths you could take with that class. It's you could very much play any role as a rogue. I think in Pathfinder, healer might be a little hard, but I think there's even feats that make that a little. And
Challenge accepted.
with things like battle medicine, I think that I mean, you could totally play a healer rogue in that regard. Take a lot of mobility feats.
With
Rogues
the
get a lot of
Inquisitor,
mobility
the
feats, so
Investigator. that's built in.
Yeah.
But it would be way more challenging to do that. I don't know. I feel like there's a challenge there to
Yeah.
make a Sakura kind of healer ninja.
Maybe that's something we could put on our website. Maybe we could start doing builds, character builds. Be like,
Love
here,
doing
like kind of
builds.
like they do for like some video games, like Elder Scrolls and whatnot, right? They build these characters and they name them and put them on. Maybe we should look into doing that. But I think that with all the mobility feats that Rogue has access to, I think there's like if you took some in all the skill feats, if you took a lot of the medicine skill feats, like word medic and whatnot, you could very much be the run around the battlefield dishing out healing to people every turn kind of deal.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got the highest initiative usually,
Yeah.
and you've got the most mobility. You're oftentimes just on the opposite side of the fighter when he takes that big hit and he needs that healing. I mean, you could just
yeah. I
quick
might
stat.
have to play around with that. See if I can come up with a viable healer rogue. I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure there's some way you can make it work, especially if you start taking archetypes.
I mean, we looked at you can choose any spell casting with the Eldritch Trickster.
Yep.
So nothing is stopping you from choosing divine and
Yeah, and dipping in with some healing
primal
magic.
for getting that heal spell, and then of course occult has soothe. So assuming you choose any of those three, you've got magical casting in the bag.
Totally. I think it's definitely possible. I mean, might even be plausible in my opinion. So maybe I'll take a stab at creating something like that and see what I can come up with. It'll be a fun exercise. Ha! That pun was definitely not intended.
Always intend your puns.
I make so many though, so it's hard to intend all of them.
Oh man, I always intend my puns. What can I say?
Anyway, we steered a bit from the point there, so
that's what we're for.
That pun was definitely intended. So yeah,
well, we covered the rogue in depth. So for the streamers, what are you guys looking for? What do you guys want us to cover next? So far, we've got a rotating topic. So we're going to fit in one more different type of video before we go back into lore videos. We're going to kind of gauge, as we start building different videos, we're going to be able to gauge what gets viewed, who likes what. And then, of course, there's your guys' input as well. If you guys like the lore videos where we cover, i.e. the different deities, and we might cover some more of the lore of Pathfinder. Here we talked about our favorite classes, and we'll probably continue going on about the classes. I think that's a pretty strong topic to choose from. So for our next topic, we haven't really picked it yet.
Yeah. Who knows what it'll be? We'll think of something. We'll probably start planning these out about months in advance so that we have ideas. We can start thinking about this stuff more than just a week in advance and really start to plan out an order to things. But that said, do you prefer to, like, with things like classes and deities, do you prefer to see more thematic and lore type stuff, or do you prefer more mechanical stuff, or a mix of both? Or what kind of content do you want to see on this channel more than anything? We'd love to see it in the comments and the chat and whatnot. But yeah, we're way over time on this one. We won't keep you guys any longer than this. So until next time, happy gaming.
Later, guys. And to cover the last bit before we sign off, we won't be here next week.
Yes. Or the following week, I believe. You're also out.
What? Let's see here.
Yes, I'll be out of country next week, and I believe
we're not going to be shooting the 9th, but we will be doing the 16th.
Okay.
And then I will be getting my second inoculation 23rd, so I will be out of commission most likely.
Okay. So yeah, this
not
this week, but the next one will be the first. Yeah, it works. It'll be the first of the month.
We're not taking time away from you guys. We will be plotting and planning for what our next is going to be. Did you include the website? It's up and running?
It's up and running. I haven't added the calendar yet. I need to add the calendar to it. I'll probably do that hopefully this evening, if not this week. So you'll be able to go there to see what's going on when, and hopefully in the future, once we're doing more than streams and videos, we can start posting other stuff as well in there. As I mentioned before, I'd love to start getting like homebrew stuff posted up there, like homebrew ancestries or archetypes, or even just neat feats we come up with or whatever.
Do you think we should do that for next week?
Yeah, we could. I could totally shoot for that. I have some ideas I've been putting off for our game, and I think now you guys reach level 2 in the Shifting Sands, and I gave you that free archetype. There might be some cool ones that people have ideas for that we can homebrew.
Yes, I am looking forward to. I'm just looking forward to that game in general.
Sonra, sad. Wait, pour one out.
Oh yeah.
I have plans. I'm bringing Sonra back.
Characters. It's survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
She held off the those sky pirates.
She almost soloed that captain. I will say she brought him down quite a ways.
The captain got 2 criticals on me. I soloed.
So yeah, hopefully the website's more content packed in the future, but we're getting there. We'll get things out. Also want to do another YouTube video for the GM Basics series I have going on, hopefully in the next week.
Dipped out.
So yeah, talk to you next time. Have fun.